All right, welcome to your first lesson. I'm so excited to work with you this year, such that we can be successful despite these difficult circumstances. Before we really jump into geometry, we'll kind of need to do an algebra refresher, so this might not feel like a geometry class until the next day or two. But just a quick reminder that slope, we use the letter M, which is actually French for monter, means to climb. So the slope is always the change in y over change in x. You're going to see that I prefer this way of writing it, and especially once we get to point slope form. So you can do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'm just going to do y minus y1 over x minus x1. And remember, as long as you're careful with the order, there's a lot of different ways or permutations that you can use to calculate the slope. So there's not one specific formula. These would all give you the same answer. We're going to be working a lot with forms of lines. I think everybody is really comfortable with slope-intercept form, which is your y equals mx plus b. The reason I have this upside down traffic light is that I actually think the order in which I've listed them here goes from easiest to hardest. So point slope form, it's not always the most comfortable, but it's actually going to turn out to be the most convenient, the most easiest to work with, I should say. I have the upside down traffic light because this order is how you'll go from rearranging from one to the other. So point slope form goes to slope intercept form, then slope intercept form goes to standard form, and then standard form goes to general form. So again, I'm guessing you're really comfortable with y equals mx plus b. We'll get a little bit more comfortable with this formula today. And then standard form, ax plus by equals c. The a value, the number out in front, has to be greater than 0. All right, the last thing before I start to kind of derive some of these formulas here, recall that if two lines are parallel, the symbol that we use are two little lines like this. So if two lines are parallel, then they have to have the same slope but different y-intercepts. If two lines are perpendicular, the symbol that we'll use for that is actually an upside down capital T. And I've seen some textbooks too not only have that upside down capital T, but then they'll put the little square for the right angle. And if two lines are perpendicular, then their slopes are opposite reciprocals of each other. So for example, if you had 2/5, I'll put opposite reciprocal would be -5 over 2, or you could put it as 5 over -2. And the beauty about the first few days here is that it should not matter which 2 points you choose to calculate the slope. Regardless of which 2 points, you should get the same slope as someone else in the class who maybe uses a different set of points. All right, so math. I've had a lot of students in years past try to memorize their way through, and I really do not want you to try and memorize. There's always logic and thought behind everything we do. So I'm actually going to kind of prove to you where the point slope formula comes from. So there's nothing for you to write down here if you can just kind of watch. I won't ever ask you to reproduce this proof, but I always think it's valuable to at least justify where it comes from. All right, so I'm just going to graph the xy coordinate plane, so x and y, and I'm just going to graph some line. And we're going to say that this line passes through 2 points, so let me call this the first coordinate point, so x sub 1, y sub 1. And then let me just call this x and y. Again, your teachers of the past probably called this x sub 2, y sub 2. I'm just going to call it x and y, and you'll see why in a second. So recall from earlier on the previous page that we defined our slope as the change in y over change in x. So I'm going to do slope is y minus y1 over x minus x1. And again, I'm really just using, let's see if I can get this right with the colors here. So y minus y1. You could flip the order too and you would still be correct. Let me just finish highlighting here. and then x minus x sub 1. Okay. All right, so where does point slope form really come from? So if you have this equation here, a lot of times we like to clear fractions. So what I'm actually going to do first is to get rid of the x minus x1 in the denominator, I'm going to multiply this side by x minus x sub 1. And I'm going to multiply this side here. So both the left, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. And by multiplying the right side by the quantity x minus x sub 1, it's actually going to cancel out or divide out this entire denominator here. So we're left with x minus x1 times m equals y minus y sub 1. Because multiplication is commutative, I can switch the order on this side. So the quantity x minus x sub 1 times m, that's really the same as m times x minus x sub 1. And then point slope form, anytime you have an equation, you can use the symmetric property to rewrite it. So I'm going to put the y minus y1 on the left, and then just copy from above. So if you know how to calculate the slope, you should always know how to do point slope form. So this passes through x sub 1, y sub 1. All right, so here's the example we'll do together before joining up in class tomorrow. So take a moment to first read. I'll take a sip of coffee while you just kind of read this. So read what's given. All right, so it kind of seems like a short question, but there's a lot going on. So write the equation of the line parallel to y equals 2/5 x plus 7, passing through the solution of this system here in all four forms. So the first thing I kind of notice is that this new line we write has to be parallel to this equation here, or that line. And there's really only one ingredient I need to pull from that, and that's the slope. So can we agree right away that this new line we create, because parallel lines have the same slope, I know that it's going to have a slope of 2/5. All right, so now we're kind of going back to our Algebra 1 days to solve the system. Where do the two lines intersect each other? My recommendation is to use substitution because we have y by itself. And so wherever I see y in that second equation, I'm going to sub in 6x plus 2. So we have 3x minus, I'll try and be purposeful with the colors, so 6x plus 2 equals 10. Let's use that distributive property, so we get 3x minus 6x minus 2 equals 10. Combine my like terms, I'm going to add 2 to the other side. And it's so tempting to stop there, but remember, for point slope form, we need to have a point and a slope. So we have x equals -4. So you can sub it into either original now to solve for the y value. So if x is equal to -4, I'm probably just going to go to this top one here. Oops. And just sub it in wherever I see x. So y equals 6 times -4. So that's -24 plus 2, so y is -22. Okay. So again, I really want you to think back to this reverse stoplight here. This is a class of mostly sophomores. You'll probably get your driver's license soon, so just make sure when you're on the road, it's the red light on top, the green light on the bottom. But we're going to start in point slope form and then go in sequential order here from point slope to slope intercept, standard, and general form. Okay. All right, so again, I think about the ingredients here. We have a point and a slope. So that's going to be y minus the y coordinate equals m times x minus the x coordinate. So every equation of a line has to have the variables y and x. So if we do that, we get y plus 22 equals 2/5 times x plus 4. So as uncomfortable as point slope might feel, I know slope-intercept form is where we love to live. Point slope form is actually the most efficient for our studies here. You'll also notice that I put the answers at the bottom. So if there's ever a time you want to work ahead of me, I don't mind. You can always check your answers down below. And we see that that matches up with our answer here. So next, I'm thinking back to that upside down stop sign. I'm going to go from point slope form to slope intercept form. So this is point slope. So let me just recopy it. All right, so slope intercept form, your only task really is to get y by itself. That fraction for a slope is kind of going to make things a little, I call it spicy. You'll see I have a lot of math jokes, so bear with me here. I actually don't really want to distribute a fraction if I don't have to. So I'm going to actually multiply right away both sides by 5. And that will, the 5, the 2/5 and the 5 up top, they'll divide out to 1. So I got 5y, let me distribute, plus 110 equals 2 times x plus 4. Distribute one more time. So 5y plus 110. Then I'll subtract the 110 over, so 5y equals 2x minus 102. And then lastly, of course, slope-intercept form, we want to get y by itself, so I'll divide both sides by 5. And there's a nice way you can always check. It's the same line we're talking about. So notice the slope here is 2/5. The slope here better also be 2/5. So we've successfully converted from point slope form to slope intercept form. I'm going to minimize this work here. I'm almost done, but my handwriting on Notability is not quite as good as it is by hand. So let me see if I can shrink this down. Okay. There we go. All right, so referring back to that upside down stoplight. So we've done point slope, we've done slope intercept, and now we're going to try standard form. And integers means whole numbers, so there can't be any fractions here. So I'm going to kind of bring this up here. So let me recopy now. So if I want to get rid of those fractions, I need to clear out that denominator. So it's pretty clear that the least common denominator here is 5. And here's where you have to be careful. If you were to scroll back up, the number in front of x has to be positive. So if I subtract 2x over, I get negative 2x plus 5y equals negative 102. But standard form requires that the a value in front of x be positive. So I'm going to divide everything by negative 1. And that is my standard form. Whew. Take a deep breath, because from standard form to general form is probably the simplest. We're just going to subtract 102 from both sides. So again, this is standard form. So obviously I'll just subtract the 102 over, and that's how I get to general form. So please feel free to re-watch this video, pause it where you need to. You can always email me with questions, and I'll see you in class tomorrow.